Hello students, today we will discuss another concept in international relations that is called collective security. You know, along with diplomacy and balance of power which we have already discussed, collective security is considered as a powerful device for power management in international relations. So, what we will do is, we will discuss particularly the background of the whole concept of collective security in international relations. Then we will try to define it, try to understand what is the meaning of collective security. Then we will discuss about the basic assumptions on the basis of which the concept is based, and then we will compare collective security with balance of power, what are the similarities, what are the differences. So, let us start with the background of the topic called collective security. Since World War II, the concept of collective security has been advocated, attacked, defended and criticized persistently. It has figured prominently in the ideological and theoretical debate concerning power management in international relations. As I said, because it is considered as one of the most important power management devices, so that is the reason there are lots of debates, discussions, agreements, disagreements about the notion of collective security, and we will clear those debates, those issues in the course of our discussion. It is regarded as a valuable device of crisis management in international relations and designed to protect international peace and security against war and aggression in any part of the world. So, basic purpose of collective security is to protect international peace and security by dealing with war, by dealing with aggression. The basic principle behind this concept can be summed up in the phrase one for all and all for one. So, it is a kind of power management device that is based on equality, and it is also based on the fact that if anyone attacks the other member of international community, then everybody will get united and deal with the situation, deal with aggression collectively. As a means of maintaining international peace between states, the legal and diplomatic organization of collective security can be located midway between the two extremes. One is the unregulated balance of power system and the other is a system of world government. It is an improvement over the balance of power system which is considered as uncertain, inadequate and unrealistic in the management of international security. We have already discussed that there is no guarantee that balance of power will be successful or it will maintain international peace and security. Sometimes if balance of power system fails, there is a possibility of war, or the states who practice the policy of balance of power, they should also be prepared for war. But so this is one extreme of power management device. The other is what is called world government. The idea of world government is sometimes entertained as a solution to the problem of war, but it is extremely unlikely because you can't have a model of world governance that can be established through conscious design or that can be established through international efforts. So, the problem is most of the countries they are not interested to surrender their sovereignty to share their sovereignty with the world government or world governance system, and that is why. So, the idea of collective security is attractive because it seeks to bring about some of the benefits of the world government without altering the essential features of an anarchical state system. So, so it is an improvement over balance of power in the sense that it at least you can collectively pool your resources, collectively collect your resources and deal with an aggression, and it is an improvement also over the international governance system or world governance system, because it does not expect you to surrender your sovereignty or share your autonomy with the world governance system. So, in that way it can be understood as a midway between balance of power and world governance system. Now, let us discuss what is the meaning of collective security. When we say collective security, it means two different things. One is collective and the other is security. So, collective is the method and security is the objective. Collective refers to the method by which security is to be defended in the event of any war or aggression against the security of another nation. So, when we say collective, Basically, we talk about the method through which nation states will deal with aggression, nation states will deal with war. The power of the aggressor has to be met by the collective power of all other nations. So it is not that unlike the balance of power system, one nation, the powerful nation would act as a balancer. Rather, here all nations will put their resources together and they will deal with the violation to the sovereignty or political independence of any country. And all nations are also required to create an international preponderance of power for negating or dealing with aggression or ending with the war. So, it is based on the expectation that if anyone violates the sovereignty or political independence of any of the members of the international system, then there will be a collective preponderance of power that would be enough to deal with the problem of aggression. Security is the chief goal of all the nations. So when you say security, so basically it is the objective of all the nations that they would provide all kinds of support to deal with aggression. Any attack on the security of a nation is in fact an attack on the security of all other nations. So collective security is basically established on the expectation that if there is a violation of sovereignty or political independence of any nation, then others will collectively pool their resources, collectively accumulate their resources and to deal with that aggression. Hence, it is the responsibility of all the nations to defend the security of the victim. So here the victim is not alone, rather the victim can be supported by all other countries and its independence, its sovereignty can be restored through the collective preponderance of power or collective accumulation of power. In formal sense, collective security refers to a set of legally established mechanisms designed to prevent or suppress aggression by any state against the other state. So basically it is based on some legally established mechanisms, maybe through the United Nations, and the purpose of collective security is to prevent or suppress aggression by any member of the international community against the other states. This is achieved by presenting a potential or actual aggressors a credible threat, and to the potential or actual victims a reliable promise. So it is based on the promise to the victim and a threat to the aggressor that if the aggressor violates the international law, he or she will be dealt severely, and it is also based on the promise to the victim that he or she is not alone, rather other countries are going to support in case its political independence or sovereignty is violated. And that is why it is a collective measure to maintain and if necessary enforce the peace. So on the one hand it is a threat to the aggressor and a promise to the victim. Such measures can range from diplomatic boycott to the imposition of sanctions and even military action. So there are so many measures through which the aggressor can be dealt with, and that may start with diplomatic boycott to the imposition of economic sanctions, and even if there is a need, then military action. So that shows that collective security is an important power device to deal with aggression and war. So the essence of the idea of collective security is the collective punishment of aggressors through the use of overwhelming power. So the purpose is it is a preponderance of power, or it is the collection of the resources of all the countries as per the mandate of the international organization, that is the United Nations, and they can collectively deal with the problem of war and aggression in international relations. So states belonging to such a system renounce the use of force to settle their disputes, but at the same time they also promise to use collective force against any aggressor, and in that respect states remain sovereign entities. So you have three purposes. First, you will not take recourse to war because that is not acceptable under the international law. On the other hand, if there is a war, so you will use your resources with the collective resources of the international community to deal with the aggressor. Third, you believe that all the states, they have the right under international law to remain as sovereign entities. The purpose of a collective security system is to maintain peace among the members of the system, not between the system and the outsiders. So, here you are all a part of the international system and there is no one from the outside. So, the point is when there is a violation of anybody's sovereignty, so all the states, all the sovereign entities, they get affected, and that is why there is no one outside like the balance of power system. Here every state has the right to exist as per the norms of the international politics, and if there is a violation to that norm, so everybody is expected to support the country because they are all parts of the international system as you are an important part of the system. For example, NATO is not a collective security system, rather it is an alliance, or perhaps it could be called a collective defense system. So, if you compare the collective security system of the United Nations and the collective defense system on the basis of which the NATO is established, you will find there is a major difference. Here, if a country is a member of NATO, you have no option to remain outside the defense pact. Rather, if there is an attack to a member of the NATO, all other countries are not only supposed, they have to support the victim, because you have no option to remain outside the system. But in the collective security system, it is optional, although you are supposed to help the other members of the international system, but sometimes even if you do not support or give your resources, that is not a violation of international law. But here in the collective defense system of NATO, all the members of states are supposed to stand with each other, give their resources, and they will not say that it is something optional, it is something in which they are not interested in. Once you become a member, so you have to guide by its charter, to guide its rules and regulations. Ideally, in a global collective security system, alliances are unnecessary, because collective security allows states to renounce the unilateral use of force, because they are all assured of the assistance if a state illegally uses the force against them. So, basically unlike the alliances system, or unlike the collective defense system, as I had given the example of NATO. So, here you do not think in the collective security system, you do not think the need for any alliances, because here you renounce the unilateral use of force, because you are assured of the assistance that if anyone uses force against you, you will be supported, you will be defended. So, the point is the security, collective security system does not look the need for any kind of alliances system. Simultaneously, it requires that all the states participate in enforcing sanctions against an aggressor. So, it is not just the force for which you have to contribute, rather you have to collaborate, rather you have to cooperate if there is a need for participating in any kind of sanctions. They may be a kind of economic sanctions. So, you are supposed to cooperate with all the other members of the international community, not only pooling your resources or not only giving them military support, rather cooperating with them when there is a need for any kind of economic assistance or economic sanctions. So, you have to cooperate with the other members of the international community. Now, let us discuss about some of the basic assumptions on the basis of which collective security system is understood and is used. States have found the idea of collective security attractive as it is based on so many important assumptions. First, it accepts that violation of the security of a nation are bound to occur, and wars and aggressions cannot be totally eliminated from the international system, which is typically defined as the military violation of territorial integrity and political independence of the member states. So, collective security system is based on the assumption that there is always a possibility of war, there is always a possibility of aggression, and you cannot rule out this type of systems, because all the states are not the same kind of states. Some are totalitarian states, some are authoritarian states, some are theocratic states. So, the nature of states or the character of states are not the same. So, there may be always a possibility of war and when there is a war, so it is basically defined that kind of military violation of territorial integrity and political independence of member states. So basically, when there is a war, that is defined as a kind of violation of your territorial integrity and political independence. So here aggression and war are clearly defined, and they are defined in this way that if there is any activity, there is any war that takes away your territorial integrity or political independence, then all other countries would consider this as a violation of international law. Second, it is possible to easily identify the aggressor by other members of the international community. So, there can be a distinction made between who is the aggressor and who is the victim, and the international organization and other members of the international community, they will take all necessary steps to identify who is the aggressor and who is the victim. Third, an international preponderance of power can be created against the potential aggressors by uniting the power of all the countries or most of the nations of the international community to bear the cost and responsibility of defending one another. So, the third basic assumption of collective security, that there will be a preponderance of power, and that will be created by uniting the power of all other members of the international community, and they will all be required to bear the cost and responsibility of defending one another. So, it is not a task one nation has to do, rather it will be a collective endeavor. It is a collective effort, and through which you can help others or help each other to deal with aggression and war. Fourth, it promises security to all the states and not just the powerful ones. So, unlike the balance of power system, which is based on great power politics, the collective security system is based on the principle of equality, and here all the states they have an incentive to join the system, because all are subject to the similar kind of problem, similar kind of aggression. Finally, it recognizes the need for an international organization like the United Nations, because that has the moral authority and political capacity to take effective action. So, if there is no international organization, it becomes difficult for the states to create the preponderance of power or collect their resources, and who is to take care of those resources, who is going to make arrangements for the collective use of that resources. For that purpose, it is based on the assumption that there will be an international organization like the United Nations for the successful operation of the collective security system. Thus, it is essentially founded on the liberal notion of harmony of interest among the nations. So, as we have discussed in case of liberal theory of international relations, so the system of collective security is based on the liberal notion or liberal assumption that there is an harmony of interest, and all states they can if they combine their resources together, they can deal with any violation of international law or any country that takes recourse to war and aggression to occupy or annex another member of international community. So, this principle is clearly different from the clash of interest among the nation states as advocated by the realist theory in international relations. Now, let us compare how the collective security system is similar or different from the balance of power system. Let us first focus on the similarity. Both the balance of power system and collective security system, they are all defensive power management devices aiming to improve the security of the states within the international system. So, they have the common objective in the sense that all are important power management devices, and the purpose is to promote the security of the states within the international system. To some extent, they are also similar in method. Both depend on the manipulation or mobilization of power as the means to deter aggression or defeating aggression. So, basically they are similar in method in the sense that both believe in the manipulation or mobilization or collection of resources, so that they can better deal with aggression and war. Both envisage the possibility of defensive war. Both also visualize the continued existence of the sovereign state system that coordinate their actions against aggression. So, basically both the system, they talk about war, they talk about the possibility of war, and if there is a war, they also visualize that all the sovereign states, they will pool their resources and coordinate with each other to deal with aggression. Both assume that states which are not themselves attacked will go to the defense of another country if it is attacked. So, here it is not necessary that you are the victim, rather you can go for the victim, you can fight for the victim. So, both the balance of power system, when it talks about the role of the balancer, or here in the collective security system, it talks of the responsibility and obligation of all the member states to collectively act against an aggressor or deal with war and violence. Both collective security system and balance of power system also believe that their effectiveness can be threatened by tremendous concentration of power by any one of the states. So, the point is both collective security and balance of power they can be disturbed, they can be violated if there is a preponderance of power or if there is a concentration of power by any one member of the international community. So, on this basis we can say there are some similarities between balance of power system and collective security, but despite these similarities there are some important differences between balance of power and collective security. Balance of power assumes that the division of states in the international system is basically based on competitive and hostile camps, whereas worldwide collective security system calls for universal cooperation. So, if you look at balance of power system, you will find states are divided into different camps, and these camps are always competitive and hostile camps. But here in collective security you find there is a lot of cooperation, there is a lot of universal cooperation. So, if anyone is attacked, so you all cooperate to deal with aggression, to deal with war. The alliances in the balance of power system are likely to be aimed at specific potential enemy or aggressor, whereas in the collective security system it is aimed at any state that turns to be an aggressor. So, here in the balance of power system you find that there are specific enemy. So, who is the enemy or who is going to be the enemy, but here in the collective security system you do not have any idea about the aggressor or who is going to be the aggressor. So, here the point is anybody can be the aggressor, anybody can be the victim. So, in that way collective security system is different from balance of power system. In the balance of power system the enemy can be from outside, whereas in the collective security system the enemy is always a member within the international community. So, the balance of power system is based on the assumption that the enemy is always from the other side, but in the collective security system the enemy is always from inside. States that join the balance of power system agree to defend certain selected frontiers, whereas in the collective security system you defend all the frontiers throughout the world. So, unlike the balance of power system you are not focused to a particular region, rather in the collective security system you deal with all the areas, all the regions of the world. So, there can be war in any region, and as a member of international society, as a member of international community, you are supposed to help the other nation even if that nation is not in your continent. As you can see in case of NATO, the mandate of NATO is basically to defend and to protect the countries of Europe. So, in case there is a problem in Asia or Africa, NATO has no role, although it is thinking of such kind of role, but at present at least you can say that NATO has a limited geographical jurisdiction or mandate, but in the collective security system anybody can attack any country belonging to any continent. In the balance of power system, obligation of the states is always limited, but in the collective security system obligation is virtually unlimited, because in the balance of power system you can plan, you can deal with the situation and you can make advanced planning, but in the collective security system you do not know about the fact that who is going to be the aggressor, and in that case it becomes very difficult for you to make any kind of advanced planning. A balancer power system permits neutrality and localization of war, which is not the case with collective security, because collective security rules out neutrality. So, in a balancer power, the small powers, they have the freedom not to be the part of the balancing system or balancer power system, but in the collective security system, small powers or small countries are always the victim, they are always the target. So, they do not have the option to remain outside the collective power system, because if you remain outside the collective power system, then any powerful country can attack you, any powerful country can subjugate you. So, in that way neutrality is a factor in balancer power system, but it is not a choice in the collective security system. A balancer power system assumes conflict of interest among the states, but in the collective security system, it is based on harmony of all the vital interests of the states, because as I said, all states can be subject to war, subject to violence, can be subjugated, can be attacked. So, balancer power system assumes the conflict of interest among the states, whereas collective security system assumes international system as an integrated system, and there is harmony of interest among the states. So, basically balancer power is based on conflict of interest, and here in the collective security system you find harmony of interest. Finally, in most respects the balancer power system is simple and easier to establish than the collective security system, which is very complex and it requires a lot of elaborate rules and international arrangements. So, in the balancer system you find things are very simple, and you can easily mobilize your resources, because you know who is going to create the problem, and because you are a major power, because you are a balancer, so it is not very difficult for you to mobilize the resources immediately. But in the collective security system, you do not know the victim, you do not know the aggressor, and when that happens, it takes a lot of time to mobilize your resources and deal with the situation. So, in that way there are important differences between balancer power and collective security system. Now, let us discuss about the history of collective security system, particularly in the League of Nations and the United Nations. The first major attempt to implement a system of collective security took place at the end of the First World War, particularly with the signing of the League of Nations Charter. Under Article 10 of the Covenant, peace was guaranteed to all the member countries, and Article 16 provided for the threat of counter action or counter war that forms the core of collective security system under the League of Nations. The pathetic history of the League of Nations in failing to maintain international peace and security reflected some of the fundamental problems with the concept of collective security. So despite the best efforts of the League of Nations, it could not prevent the Second World War, and that is why the whole system of collective security collapsed like a house of cards. And the reason was not very difficult to understand, because there was a realization that unless collective security was really made universal and in particular included the most powerful states of the time, it was unlikely to be effective. Despite the major initiatives taken by the US President Woodrow Wilson, who was considered as the father of League of Nations, America was not a maid of the League of Nations. The problem is, all the major powers were also not included, and that is why the idea of collective security, although it was institutionalized through the League of Nations, it could not survive or it could not prevent the outbreak of the Second World War. Overcoming these problems, the founding fathers of the United Nations created a collective security system, and through this they visualized how to maintain international peace and security. So, the founding fathers of the United Nations, they tried to their level best to overcome the problem of collective security in the League of Nations, and they created a powerful organization that can and maintain the peace by force if necessary. So, it was made more practicable by including all the major powers in the United Nations Security Council with their veto power, and that is how the United Nations wanted to make an improvement in the collective security system of the League of Nations. To this end, Article 1 of the UN Charter provided for effective collective measures for preventing and removing the threats to war and for the suppression of acts of aggression and other breaches to peace. And these collective measures were elaborately laid down under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter and called as action with respect to threats to peace, breaches of peace and acts of aggression that dealt from Article 39 to 51, almost 12 articles. So, now there was detailed provisions in the United Nations for dealing with the problem of war and dealing with the threats to peace. So, in that way, it was more realistic, more practical than the collective security provisions found in the League of Nations. How these provisions were actually implemented and what were the success and failure of United Nations in terms of collective security, that we will discuss in a separate lecture. So, thank you for your patient hearing.